Hello, everyone. My name is Alec Kalingas. I'm one of the members of the Petrosys Database Services Group out of the Houston office, and I'm going to be the one running us through today's short presentation on our approach to records management. And what we're going to be going through today is we're just going to define a little bit what is records management so there's no confusion. We'll talk a little bit about various levels of maturity of records management that we're finding out there in the industry. We'll talk about the Petrosys web interface in general, just a brief discussion on our web-based interface and how we use that web-based interface specifically for records management. Okay, but before we really get into anything, I really want to discuss what are we talking about? What is a record? What are we trying to manage here? And we're really talking about pretty much anything that records information. Um, if you have paper documents, digital files, rock core, anything that might record past, present, or future business operations that's important, that's a record. It's a record of information, and that's what we're talking about. Right? Now, we're not talking about records of information in a relational database, structured data in a relational database. We're talking about unstructured data types. All right. So first off, what's important to consider when we're talking about unstructured data? Well, you got to understand the why you've decided to start tracking records and records management. Why are we doing this? That's going to influence the how you get it done answer. I mean, for example, if the why we're doing this is we just have to adhere to some government regulations, well, then it depends on what those government regulations are, what you have to do to adhere to those regulations. All of those questions are going to influence the how are we going to do our records management operations. Okay, and the process of RM, you can't forget this, is trying to impose structure to something that's not structured. We're trying to give some structure to something that's natively unstructured. All right, and the way you do that is coming up with classifications, groupings, subgroupings, this taxonomies, the taxonomy sets that you want to define is really, really important as going to set the pace for what questions, what things you can or can't do. So the pre-planning phase is just a must. I mean, we're talking about a data governance exercise. Is data governance and more data governance. I know everything that we do in our world, we're always concerned with data governance, right? But when we're talking about records management, it's a little bit different than some of the business object types that we're normally familiar with, like wells and seismic. In a PPDM database, there's a table called well, and there is a column called KB underscore LEV, and it's pretty obvious to anybody that the Kelly bushing for a well should go into that little slot. Records management is not like that. It's very much more ambiguous. All right, it's not really well defined as to exactly what these things are, and that's something that you have to decide. So the data governance portion of your records management program is very important. We're looking at a chart that's trying to show levels, various levels of record management maturity. It starts on the left with a simple cataloging system, right, and it's moving towards the right, getting more and more and more sophisticated towards real business intelligence. Okay. And we're all somewhere along this spectrum of maturity, and I imagine you guys are hoping that your organization is sort of moving to the right. What I'm kind of showing here is somebody that's at a very low level of records management maturity. And like everybody else, they've accumulated many, many, many digital files over the years, but they just never bothered to get a system to help manage those files, so that they're at the stage of simply wanting to catalog the files that they have, right? They need a cataloging application. And they need to do this because they're under statutory obligations to do it, right? And they've got to improve the routine operations. They just have to do it. So they're asking, what files do we have? Where are those files? And what are the objects, the wells, seismic line that those files are associated with? And they can't answer the questions. Okay, so that's like an existing cataloging system. And Petrosys has many, many tools to help identify the files, and we can create mnemonics and apply metadata to those files and get that into a records management system so that the people can do queries on those files and bring them back up when they need them. Right? But sort of in the middle, we have a lot of clients that they're already doing cataloging. They don't have any troubles with that. That's all just fine. They now have the need to take those files that are nicely cataloged. They want to start dissecting those files, pulling those files apart to try to get more significant information out of those files. And they actually pull those files apart and they put them back together in other ways and are just managing documents on a fragmented document level. The third sort of a tier are applications sorry, applications that actually now start really trying to look at the information in a digital file and truly try to dissect that information and then augment a corporate data store. One of the examples of an application that does this is Oilware, and Oilware is a program that all it does is try to manage well log curves. And well log curves are really a weird one. They're sort of on the borderline between structured and unstructured data. There's kind of elements, a little bit of both in them. And that application will actually dissect the input files into a very set of granular components. You get the log curves, all these mnemonics, well header attributes, and it will just extract all of that really detailed information. Once it's extracted, that detailed information can be put into the corporate database to augment the the master data store. So it's a full spectrum of tools and knowledge and things that you want to do, and you're trying to work over time towards that business intelligence approach. This is the welcome page for our web-based front end to the database management system. And our database is built on the PPDM standard. And this is just showing different business objects and things, entry points into the PPDM database. If I just click on Wells here and click search, what that'll do is it'll just search the database, and since there's no criteria, it will just list all of the wells that are in the database. Now, in a real world sense, that might be a really large database. It's all right. If you'll notice down here to the lower right, we're only showing one of 60 records of a total of about 70,000 records in the database. So it returns fairly quickly. It doesn't matter if the return sets are large. We page them so that the user can get on with his work. As you click on elements in the list here, right, these are wells that are in the database, you'll see the details towards the right. Okay, and we can customize, break up these panels any way that we want. All right, we tend to make tabs and distribute the little data fields on various tabs just to try to give a little bit more organization to a big sort of chaotic database. Right, this makes it a little bit easier for a user to work with. All right, if you notice down below, there are other detailed buttons that show us child information for the element, the particular well we've picked on. So I've picked on this well. The system is telling me there's 16 formation tops in the PPDM database. There's some well aliases hanging around. We have some RM items in the database for that particular well. There's a directional survey. The well has 5 aliases. Right? If we want to look at any of these things, you simply click the button. All right, so these are all the tops for that particular well. And again, it's the same thing. You can click on a record, you can see the details on the right. And if you go further down, you would see children if there had children. So, for instance, if I click directional survey, we can see this well has 1 survey. That survey has more children of survey points, right? So it's just a general mechanism that we use to peruse and let a user work with the database. Right? It's read-write. If you do have authority to update the database, you can click edit. Right? These fields are editable, and at any time you just click a field, reset it, do whatever you want. Now I'm not going to make any changes. Cancel on that. You can create new objects. Right now I'm on the well interface. If I were to click new, I would get a panel that would allow me to introduce a new well into the database. Okay, so that's just very briefly the web front end. If I go to the records management button here, that takes me to the records management area of the system. And again, if I click on an element, it will query the database and it will just show me the details for that element over here on the right. Now, one of the interesting things about records management information is the information about the record itself. In other words, who created this? Who has edited it? Whenever we're doing anything with the database, or if we're editing anything in the database, you probably can't read this, but Petrosys automatically tracks who created things in the RM system, when was it created in the RM system. If somebody has updated some information, it will record the fact that that information was updated by this user on this particular date. Okay, and we also track effective expiry dates, whether the data is valid or not, just to know some quality information about the records that are in the system. All right. So again, if you have the authority, you can use the edit button. You can create new records. You can modify these and all the rest of it. Now, one of the interesting things about the detailed panel over here is this button down below. It says open or save the file. If I click that, it'll give me the opportunity just to go grab the file from the network and it'll download it to my PC here. Yeah, that's great. Okay. But what's more interesting, and you might not be able to read it, but it's showing me the path to that file. This is the actual path on my file system where that file is contained. So this is a part of the cataloging portion of the system that I talked about during the lecture part of the system. Remember, we had the need for one client. All they need to do is catalog files. What files do we have? Where are these files on our system? Roughly what is inside of these files. That's what this is. Okay, so we've applied some metadata to this file. The subcategory is a cross section. The category is a well. These fields will help us retrieve this record from the database if we want to run a query. Okay, so the document is in the database. It's been classified with a category and a subcategory. There's a few other bits and pieces of metadata that goes along with it, and that record does have an associated with a well in the database. You can see right down here, one well is associated with that record in the PPDM database. Okay, so that's one kind of search, pretty easy. We have this advanced search tool. And the advanced search tool will allow me to get a little bit more specific on what types of records I want to find. So for instance, we were just looking at something. It was a rock evaluation document. Well, the question is, what other rock evaluation documents might I have in the system? We can run queries, so I can pick this records management table right here. These are all the columns that are in that table, the category. Well, what category am I interested in? Well, I can set this to equals, does not equal, contains. This is just a general query tool, right? And if I click this button, you'll notice I don't have to key in, things that might or might not be in the database. That button will query the database for me and show me valid selections. Right? If I want to add another criteria, I can click the plus button and category equals wells. Okay, how about and subcategory equals rock evaluation? Okay, and it's just an and. You can add another criteria and another one and another one. It's just a query tool. I'm going to take that one off and run this query. So I'm trying to find all of the rock evaluations in the database and just come back with a couple of them. Okay, and we've got some details on those things. Here's the actual file itself. I can have a look at it, and there we go. Okay. Something else I can do with the advanced search tool. I'll clear out the criteria. If I want to find all of the documents in the database that have associations with other business objects like wells, that's what this query is going to do. Wells exist. How can wells exist inside of a document? Well, these are links to wells that exist inside of a document. Say, okay. All right, so we can see these elements in the database are associated with one of these business objects, a well in the corporate database. Which well is that thing associated with? This well. I can click on it, come down, and now we're just in the well header for that particular well. Yes. All right. Now that's finding all of the documents that had a link to any of the wells in the database management system. That's pretty open-ended kind of a query. What would I do if I wanted to find all the documents that were associated with a particular well, or all the documents that were associated with a particular seismic line, or all the documents that were associated with some other business object inside of our PPDM 38 database? Well, we use the advanced search for that. Okay, this time wells, well, it's not just data exists. Now I'm really kind of interested in one particular name, one particular well out of the database. So I want to query well name, or well name equals. I can use this tool to query the well names. Okay, but I've just got a well name that I've already got and a little sticky note that I'm kind of curious about, and that's the well name. Okay. If I run that query, well, it finds that well did indeed have one document associated with it in the database. Okay. Once we've done that, once we know we have a well in the database, we can edit that association. All right. That's what this is right here. Okay. You'll notice I can edit this object. Okay. I can edit that object. If I come down here, this doesn't say edit because it's really difficult for a user to know how to get that link broken. All this is like a break link button, right? So if I want to break the link, I can click on that and I can say, yes, I really am sure, right? But I'm not going to actually do that. Cataloging, right? That's all fine and dandy, working with things that are in the database, but how do you introduce a new record into the record management system, right? Well, that's what this little green plus button is for. Add an RM item to the database. And when we click this, it'll execute a wizard. And we actually have several wizards for interacting with these items in the database, right? You can run this in one of three ways. You can, a physical item, you want to catalog a physical item such as a core, a cutting. I mean, literally, this is a hard piece of something or other, physical media, a piece of rock, or a core or something. And this will walk you through on how to get that registered in the PPDM database. If you've got a digital file, right, maybe it's a Word doc or an Excel file that's coming in from some drilling operations, that's what this operation does, right? Digital files and physical items we do treat slightly differently in the records management system. They are very, very different things, and we do treat them differently. The third option here on this wizard is add content to existing cataloged items. So this is something that you can use to bulk update things that are already in the database. Now there's lots and lots and lots of things that we do with records management. This is just a webinar, so I'm just going to use this one tool. I'm going to take a physical item. I've got a core. It's in my hand right now. It's a rock core, and I've got a place in my office that thing needs to be stored, and I want to get that stored in the right place and get that encoded into the database. So how do we do it? Okay, I've got a core and I want to get it into the system. So I'll go to next. First off, there's a lot of fields that we can enter. Okay, these are the metadata fields that we can apply to this digital file so that when we tuck it away into the database, we can bring it back easily. Now, I'm not going to do a whole lot of stuff here. One thing, blue fields are mandatory, so I have to fill those in. So the media type. What type of media is this? It's not a CD, it's not a disk, it's not electronic. This is a core. Okay? All right. The storage path. Where is Alec going to go put this core in the Petrosys world of where we put things? All right, well, where are we going to put it? I've got to make a choice, right? I've got to come up. These are the places that I can put things. I'm not going to put it in my house. It's going to go some Petrosys place. I'm in Houston, so I'm going to go to the Houston office, right? Well, the Houston office only has the 8th floor. We're not that big. We've got a couple of storage rooms around, right? I'm going to use this particular storage room. Inside of there, we've got a couple of cabinets working. I want to use this cabinet. That cabinet has a bunch of shelves. I want to use that particular shelf. Even that shelf in that room has a bunch of slots busted up. And I'm going to put that core in slot A. All right. So what this is saying, all right, I've got slot A. on this shelf, in this cabinet, in this room, on this floor, in this building, right? That's what that is saying, and I'm going to say okay. And that's what that storage path is. So that's telling me where that thing is actually physically stored. Yeah. All right. Now I can give it a title. Alex Core. Not to lose it. And then the category. Well, this is well. I'm going to stamp that as category well, subcategory. What is this? It's not a cross section. It's not, yeah, it's rock evaluation kind of stuff, right? And I can put in other bits and pieces of information that I want. And this is also one of the data governance issues. This is something that gets vetted out in the data governance process. What things do we need to track on our documents in order to satisfy the things that we need to satisfy? And that's totally open-ended. It's up to you, right? But anyway, I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to say add an item to the list. Okay. If I'd like, I can keep adding in more items. I might have lots of cores I got to get, into the system, and I've just got the one. Right? So I've got a core defined. It's got a little bit of metadata defined with it. Now I just want to go to the next step. Okay. Notice at the top of the wizard here, it says wells, seismic surveys, seismic lines, areas, authors, remarks. What is all this? These are other business elements, business objects that we have in the PPDM database. If we're going to introduce a document into our database, very good chance that that document should be associated with a well, maybe a couple of wells. Maybe that document is coming along with a seismic survey. I want to join that document to those other business objects in my database. I need to. And so that's what this wizard is allowing me to do. I'm on the well page right now. It's showing me a list of wells in the database. Right? And I know for a fact it is this particular well. I could run queries in here like I know it's from the Rocky Mountain Oil Center. I know it has 101 in the well name, right? And I know that's my well. So I'm just going to click it. It puts it right here. That core came out of this well, and so I want to have that link in the database. Okay? Now the core is not associated with any other well. If it was some other item, not a core, I can associate this item with many things, but this is a core. It's just one well. Next. I'm not going to associate it with a seismic survey. Next. I am not going to associate it to a seismic line. Areas. Yes, I want to associate it to an area. This core came out of the ground, and pieces on the ground are parts of areas. So where did this core come from? Well, it came out of Wyoming. So I want the country, United States, right? And Wyoming. See if it's in the oh, it is indeed. It's in the database. Okay, so I just click those, and you'll notice it adds the associations over here. Click next. I don't have any authors. There's no author for this particular core. Go next. Now, I'm going to want to comment this physical item that I'm putting into the database, right? So I can generate comments. What comment types, all the rest of it, again, that's up to you. I'm just going to put a general comment. Comment for a demo, and I'll add the remark. Now I can add as many remarks as I want. Number 2, add a remark, on and on and on. All right, get that physical item really well documented, commented, whatever else. I click finish, and that's that. It says created 2 items in the database because of 2 associations that I've made with other things. And we can close this out, and we're done with the entering a new item into the database. If we want to export data from the system, let's kind of scroll back up here. I'm going to clear out my query to say OK. Any data that you have in this data matrix, and again, you limit the data in the data matrix by running these little queries, like cross section, that kind of stuff. You get the data that you want in the spreadsheet displayed, and if you click this icon right here, that will dump the data out to either an Excel file or a couple of different ASCII formats. You say OK to that. It'll take all of this data, generate an Excel file for me, and then just deliver that to my desktop. All right. Now that's all the data that's in the data matrix that's being displayed, and that's fine and dandy. But what do you do if you have to work with a group of elements? For instance, maybe I have to apply a set of elements to a group of documents that were entered into the database incorrectly. I just want to select a whole bunch of elements and then apply some bulk updates to that kind of thing. Well, before you can do that, you have to have a list of things that you want to apply those edits to, right? And you have to make lists. So I'm just going to make a list of cross sections. Now, if I hit the all right, a list of cross sections, and I want to save that list. Okay, if I want to save the list, I click this button right here, Save Selection, and again, I can get a little widget here that lets me create a list of these elements, and that list is actually in the database. So I'm going to be able to use this list tomorrow, day after, whenever. The list can either be set to private so I can see it, or I can set it to public so that everybody can see it. Right? But I'm just going to make a list called demo logs 2 and say OK, or I'm sorry, not demo logs, demo sections, and say OK. Now, if I want to do something to this list of elements, all right, we have this thing here called bulk delete wizard. I'm not going to run that, but I think you can understand what that's going to do. I'm going to run this thing called bulk update wizard. The bulk update wizard is pretty darn simple. Selection list. You pick the list that you just made, demo sections. It gives you the sections that you just created, right? Nothing much else to do on this tab. You hit next. Now we can just reset the data for these elements. Maybe this was entered incorrectly. It wasn't correct. I don't know. I'm just giving a demo, right? But these edits are going to be applied to all of the things that are in that list. We can go to next, and it will give me a review before I commit this change. Okay, it will show me the old and new values at the top of the interface here, and I can peruse this when I'm okay, and I know it's okay. I can click finish. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to actually click exit here and leave the page. Just as a final note, before we close out the little demonstration here, there are a lot of administration tools that help us push data into the database and get it out of the database as well that I haven't shown you. There's interfaces to help us manage all of our reference values, interface to help us manage where our stores are. When I say stores, remember the shelf that was in a room, that was on a floor, that was in a building. That's the store manager, right? It's just an interface to help you manage those objects. You can manage deleted prospects. There's security things. There's a lot that I can't show you that this interface does help you with on an administration level. Anyway, that's all I had for this little bit longer than I had hoped little presentation on records management. I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, feel free to key them into the chat box now, and me and my colleagues will try to get your questions answered. If not, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.